We'll be starting on our adventure soon, but first I have an exciting announcement. Recently, I submitted a sample of my narration to a contest that's being held by one of my favorite horror channels, Mortis Media. As it turns out, I was selected as one of the winners. There are 4 of us, and next week, each of us will have our own collaborative video with Mort. At the end, you can vote for who your favorite narrator was, and the winner will return for a second collaboration. Now, I think you should all go and support Mortis Media to begin with. He's a fantastic narrator. But certainly, I'd love to see each of you there to support the contest and vote as well. I'm not yet sure which day I'll be featured, but I will let you know when I know, and I will link you to the video when it's available. Regardless, it's an exciting thing for me because Mortis Media is the channel that inspired me to start this one, so it's all very special to me. A link to his channel will be in the description. But enough. You didn't come here to listen to information about contests. You came here to be terrified. And that, my lovely listeners, is precisely what we'll do. So, if you're ready for our paranormal adventure, then get comfortable, grab some coffee or tea, and get ready for another journey into the night. I was doing spring cleaning on a Monday and was taking things out to the curb, which involved me having to continuously tell my dog to wait and not to go outside. On my last trip inside, I open the door and say, "Ah, Toby," as his signal to get back from the door. I walk to the dining room, grab the last box, and halfway to the door, I hear this super soft and gentle female voice say, "Ah, Toby." I stood there for a good 30 seconds, trying to figure out if I had really heard what I thought I had. My dog definitely reacted to the voice as well. I saw his ears pivot toward the sound. It was the first time I've ever audibly heard a disembodied voice. I've heard whispers and laughs, but never a solid voice that I could understand. I was transitioning over from part-time retail hours to full-time third-shift job, and had a week to alter my sleeping schedule accordingly. Nearly every day I failed, laying down just to rest my eyes and completely falling asleep. You'd think I'd have learned after the first few times. Nope. Unfortunately, I only had a day left at this point. I knew if I didn't succeed this last night, I'd be in for a world of tired when I began the job. But again, I laid down just to rest my eyes halfway through the night like an idiot when I got just a little tired. I wasn't exhausted or anything, I was already a night owl, but before I could even relax or close my eyes, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. Our house is over 140 years old, so every time someone moved in it, you could hear them. But there was one problem. My father was at work. My mother was at a schooling convention in another state, and my brother was at Boy Scouts camp. There wasn't supposed to be anyone else in the house but me. I was very, very alert now, and petrified. And despite an army's worth of bladed weapons in my room, I chose to play possum, feigning sleep. I hoped that whoever it was would just take what they wanted and leave me be. Sure, I have weapons, but I'm a very small girl and could be easily overpowered. Stupid now that I think back on it, but oh well. With closed eyes, I heard my bedroom door pushed open, then footsteps creaking across the floor directly toward my bed. I thought, oh great, so this is how I die. As I could just feel someone leaning over me and breathing on the back of my neck. Oddly, the breath was neither cold nor warm. "Do you really think you should be doing that?" was what I clearly heard a patronizing, unfamiliar man's voice behind my head ask, and then silence. I sat up slowly after a few moments so as not to bash my head on whoever this was if they were still there, but there was nothing. Nobody. My bedroom door was closed, and a quick search of the house revealed nothing. I at first questioned if it was perhaps sleep paralysis, which is often accompanied by hallucinations, but I'm very, very confident it was not. On the bright side, I was definitely not tired anymore and stayed up the whole rest of the night. The job turned out to be hell in terms of energy sapping, but I don't know if I would have made it through the first day without getting the sleep I needed at the right time. So, thank you, Ghost? I was living in a huge house in suburbia by myself a few years ago. I had 2 cats, very little furniture, and spent most evenings reading. It was dusk, and I was on the couch, reading, and I heard something at the front door. I went to look, and was standing in the foyer, looking toward the front door. My cat, who is a large Maine Coon, and the most chilled-out cat you've ever met, was at my feet. Then, I felt it. A presence immediately behind me. You know how you can feel that someone's behind you, really close? I didn't hear anything, but I felt it. It was this coldness, and I had a strong feeling of bad. Every instinct I had was screaming, "Don't turn around. Don't look at it." I tried to see out of the corners of my eyes, but all I could catch was sort of a fluttering black, like a cloak or something. And that's when I heard it. My cat was hissing, facing me and whatever was behind me, full-mouthed, open so you could see all the teeth, hissing. Her entire body was bushed out, back arched. I had never seen the cat like that before. He was freaked. He continued hissing for a minute, and then suddenly, whatever was behind me was gone. I felt it go. My cat calmed down, and it was over. It was a Friday night, and I was home alone, again, and I was scared because all week I felt like something was building up. Everybody left, and me and the dogs were in the living room watching TV. It was an old TV with buttons for each channel, and there was a remote, or you could press the number on the TV. As I was watching it, the TV started cycling through the numbers, and I tried the remote, took the batteries out thinking it was sticking, and the same thing was happening. I got up and I was pushing the reset button when I heard the toilet flush in the bathroom by my room. Then the kitchen light went off and on. I didn't know what else to do because the dogs were all standing at the door wanting out, so we went out on the porch and sat there for a while. When we went back in, it didn't feel wrong, so I was watching TV again. And then it started again. So I unplugged the TV and turned on all the lights in the hallway and the living room, and me and the dog sat there in silence. Somehow I fell asleep, but I was woken up a couple of hours later by the large window in the front shattering. Shattered out like somebody punched through it. The dogs started going nuts, and I couldn't let them out the door because of the glass. And at that moment my mom came home. I got my ass handed to me again over something I didn't do, and when I told them what happened, nobody believed me. No one believed about the glass, and I had to muck the horse stalls to pay for the window. That house was just bad, because when we moved in, the sleeper sofa bed fell on my arm and almost broke it. I fell through the only bad board on the porch, and the pool deck the same way. My mom fell in the dry pool and broke a back rib. Something was in the woods, on the horse lot, and it always made me feel like dark and terrifying, even in the middle of a southern summer. Things were just wrong, and they still are. I've been recently thinking about something that's been a mystery to me for quite some time. I've always chalked my experience up to being haunting, and I'm still convinced that it was, but I would like to see if other people agreed, or if there was an explanation to my experience. A little backstory to myself before getting super into the story. I've been diagnosed with PTSD, panic disorder, OCD, and bipolar. I bring this up because my doctor explained to me that some cases of bipolar can come with small hallucinations, but nothing vivid or disturbing, more like startling. This explains why I saw what I call shadow people every now and then, and running towards me out of the corner of my eye in a split second, I'd see someone standing nearby, but they'd disappear after I blinked or looked directly towards them. I bring this up because it applies to some of my experiences. I've had two really creepy experiences that I wanted to talk about. One is pretty short, but the other is a bit of a long one. I'll start with the long one first, since it impacted me the most. When I was 13, I was going through a lot. My mom was abusive. I only realized years later how fucked up she really was with me, but really good at covering it up. Her boyfriend at the time was abusive as well, but not nearly as clever as my mom, so all my hate went towards him, even though my mom was doing the more fucked up things. We were moving out of my hometown for a reason I can't remember to a town nearby. One where I didn't have to change schools since I really didn't want to, and the drive wasn't very long. We looked at a small trailer-like house in my grandma's neighborhood. The person showing it to us opened the door, and what should have been a red flag at the time, it was a complete disaster. The people who lived there before completely up and left, leaving all their things behind, even their dog, who was incredibly sweet and beautiful. There were small roaches everywhere, and the dog was super skinny and covered in fleas. When we asked the lady to show us the place, she said that she didn't know why these people left everything behind. I didn't know what it was about the place, despite that ominous sign, but I felt compelled to be there, with its roach infestation and all. I told my mom I didn't sense anything bad about the place. I had this sort of sensitivity to things that told me if something was wrong about where I was, something that saved me a couple of times before, so I grew to listen to it, but nothing was coming up, so I figured it was fine. Skip to a couple of weeks after moving in, and things got bad, fast. My mom and her boyfriend were constantly yelling at each other and throwing things, while I curled up in bed with the dog that was abandoned at the house that we adopted into our lives. Cinnamon was what we named her, and it was like she knew what was happening from the moment we stepped in, because she was with me every night, watching the door in bed with me, with her body in front of mine, so if anyone was to be hurt, it was her. We haven't even been in each other's lives for long, but Cinnamon became a very protective force for me very quickly. Almost every night they would fight, and I noticed it began to bother our strange neighbors. I never talked to our neighbors, but they were always outside, staring at our house and looking angry, probably disturbed by the constant yelling at night since our houses were barely 4 feet apart. When I asked my mom about them, she told me that they were just crazy, because she's seen them yelling at our house in a weird language. They constantly talked in this strange language, and I could hear them sometimes when I was washing dishes. To this day, I can't determine what language it was. At this point, I was becoming extremely suicidal. With my horrible home life, horrible school life, and finding out my grandpa, who I was really close to and was the only positive father figure in my life at the time, was diagnosed with cancer, I wanted to end it all. I even went so far as to plan how I was going to do it. We had a gun in the house, sleeping pills, and alcohol, how to do it the quickest and least messy way, and so on. Things like that were constantly in my head, and I cried myself to sleep every night from the pain of my life, and the pain of knowing that I was going to go through it all again tomorrow. This is when life got really weird. I felt something watching me all the time, like something was hovering near me at every waking moment. It was especially strong in the bathroom, which disturbed me even more. I hated being in there. I had to have music on when I showered, or else I wouldn't have done it. And more often than not, I was paranoid the entire time. I often ran out of the bathroom as soon as I could, not even getting dressed and getting water everywhere. It was especially bad when I was home alone, which was pretty often. It was like something was fucking with me. The TV in the living room would turn on randomly when I was alone, but never when other people were there. At this point, I knew faulty wiring could cause it to happen. I checked the plug, and it was completely plugged in, and none of the buttons on it were bad, so I figured it was just the wires inside the plug doing it. But that still didn't chase away the bad feeling I had. As soon as I turned it off and left the room, it would turn back on. It was one of those old TVs that made that horrible, loud static noise when it was on, but nothing was connected to it to give it a picture or a different sound. So I knew when it came on again, every time. I got sick of hearing that awful static, so I turned the volume all the way down so that it would shut up. It became a constant thing. Every time I walked into the living room, it was on, but only when I was alone. It got even worse, quickly. One night, when my mom and her boyfriend were yelling, I, for some reason, couldn't take my eyes away from the closet. Something was standing there. I could feel it. I opened the door at one point to see, but nothing but my clothes were there. But then I felt a hand, as if someone was really touching me. The hand ran down my back. I could feel its fingertips pushing down the fabric of my shirt against my skin. But when I turned around, nothing was there, and the hand disappeared. I stared at my closet all night until I finally passed out. I was on edge all the time, and with my grandpa's cancer only getting worse, my suicidal thoughts were getting worse. Everyone in the house was constantly pissed off, me included, to the point where I was starting to yell with my mom when she was fighting with her boyfriend, which I had never done before out of fear. We had given Cinnamon away by this time since she was growling and biting at them, so I felt totally alone. There was this strange smiley face that was on my wall the day we moved in, one that often drew my eyesight when I walked into my room. Little kids had been in my room before we moved in, and it was damn near impossible to get crayon off the walls, so I left it there. It looked like a regular smiley face, except one eye was closed, like it was winking, but it was extremely crooked. I just thought it was creepy for some reason, and left it at that. At most, looking at it when I entered my room and getting a bad feeling about it is all that happened. Suddenly, I started seeing it in the bathroom. It happened twice, both times I took a shower. One time, it was in the mirror. The mirror was completely fogged up except in the very top corner, and that had a smiley drawn on it. It was too tall for me to reach, so even when I tried to wipe it away, I couldn't reach it, and I immediately left the bathroom since it unnerved me. No one else ever came into the bathroom when I was in it, except my mom on occasion to use the bathroom, but always told me when she was coming in, and even she wasn't tall enough to reach it, so it couldn't have been her. Her boyfriend was tall enough, but neither of them knew about my discomfort with that face, so neither of them would have had a reason to do it. Besides, I would definitely have noticed a man like him come into the room. The second time, I was in the shower itself, and so was the smiley face on the wall. Mind you, this shower was huge, still the biggest one I've ever seen, but enough to fit at least 4 or 5 skinny people into. So naturally the wall was a decent space away from me when I showered, and yet, there, plain as day, was that damn face, made in bubbles. At first I thought it could have been from my hair, but it was too perfect, and the wall wasn't even wet. It didn't have any indication that the bubbles were anywhere near it. There was a third incident in the bathroom not involving that face. I was taking a warm bath to try to relax and decided to take my glasses off too. I closed the shower curtain because I felt like something was watching me and I felt violated. After some time, I felt a strange urge to look at the curtain behind me, and when I did, I saw a porcelain doll's creepy little face, as clear as day, staring at me. But the moment I jumped and looked again, it was gone. I told my mom about it, and she said it was just because I didn't have my glasses on. But she admitted that something was weird with the bathroom because she felt watched in there too. I didn't believe what she said about the doll's face, though. I know when I see something that isn't there when my glasses are off. The doll's face was too damn perfect to be something I saw without my glasses on. I could even see the lines of its glass eyes when I think about it. There was no way I imagined it. It was too vivid, and it still haunts me to this day. We moved out not too long after. My mom broke up with her boyfriend for the third time, only to later get back with him, but moved into my grandpa's house to try to help him while he was going through cancer treatment. I still think about that house a lot, and knowing I wasn't going to be there anymore was relieving. I'm convinced there was something there, toying with me, but if anyone can offer an explanation, let me know. The second story is quick, so won't be nearly as long. My mom, aunt, and I were going to Louisiana to see my great-grandparents, and we decided to stay there for a while to enjoy some local places. We ended up getting a hotel room near a highway, and after having a long but fun day, we went to bed early. I never had a more restless sleep than I did then, and I'm an insomniac. There was this figure standing at the edge of my bed that my mom and I were sharing. It just stood there and gave me a sense of overwhelming anxiety, not too unlike what I constantly felt in the house of the first story. It might have just been my imagination, but I swore I saw it lift a hand and reach toward me, prompting me to hide my face in my pillow and blankets like a scared little girl. I chalked it up to being a coat hanging on the wall and told myself I was just seeing things since it's dark and I'm tired, but when morning came and I could see things more clearly, there was no coat hanging on the wall. I asked my mom and aunt if they felt anything weird last night, and they both told me yes. It was like something was watching them. My aunt was even more freaked out because she thought she heard shots in the night. None of us knew what was going on that night, but we all felt the same feeling and talked about it for hours after we left. Was I just having a mental breakdown or being paranoid when these things happened? I still firmly believe that the paranormal was involved, but if there's another explanation, I'd be happy to hear them. It started about 2 weeks ago, with small things happening here and there and knocking noises, footsteps, nothing for me to be too worried about. I was usually alone until my wife started to hear things too, both when she was alone and when we were together. I started to get more attentive about it when I bought my 9-year-old a new tablet, not even 4 days old. My family and I were all downstairs watching a movie when we heard a loud crash from upstairs. It startled us a little, so we went up to see what it was. I looked around, and I found my daughter's brand new tablet on the ground, smashed and face up. It wasn't the only thing either. She had a couple of trinkets and plushies laying in the middle of the floor. Now, from where it fell off, I had to assume was a small bedside table that she has. I was definitely more upset than scared, but now I had my radar up. It started ramping up, the knocking and the footsteps around my house, and as an added bonus, my youngest daughter of 3 was starting to talk to something more often and shouting, "Stop," or "Don't do that." Then one day, I was looking after my aquarium that sits in my living room, and my 3-year-old was playing with her toys in the middle of the hall. I have a clear view of her and her bedroom from where I was standing. If you can imagine looking straight down the hall and looking into her room, the first thing you will see is her bed, and somewhat on top of her bed she has a fort, or a teepee if you will. Anyways, as I was cleaning the tank, out of the corner of my eye, I see the teepee start tipping over to its side. I look up from what I was doing, and it looked like it was going to fall over. That's when my 3-year-old turns and looks into her room and shouts, "Stop that!" And it goes back into its original position. I had chills. I grabbed her and I said it was okay. I asked her what she saw and who it was that she was screaming at. And all she said was, "It was the monster, Daddy." Now, what was the last straw with me was just on Monday. It was about 10 p.m. and my wife had just put both kids into bed. My littlest one will come in and out of her room to ask for some juice or milk, or she needs to pee, anything so she can stay up a little longer. It's just what she does. We are used to it. Well, this night, after the many times of her getting out of bed, we finally got her down, or so we thought. My wife and I were sitting on the couch watching television when we started to hear the door handle of her room jiggle, so we knew she was awake and about to come out. But she didn't. The door kept opening and closing, not fully, but just enough to hear it unhinge and close again and again. We paused the show we were watching just to make sure, and sure enough, it was her door. Open and close, open and close. I was upset, and I got up quietly to go in and surprise her, catch her in the act, and tell her to go to sleep. As I approached the door, I can clearly see it, so I timed it to when it would be back to the open position, so all I had to do was push the door. It was not my daughter the door flung open, and my daughter was in bed covered in her sheets, and she looked at me. I was stunned, to say the least, and at that moment I knew it wasn't her. I asked her, "Were you playing with the door?" I knew it wasn't her, but I wanted to see what her response would be. And she tells me again, "It was the monster, Daddy." She slept in our bed that night. Like I said, I had enough, so that same night after my wife got my daughter settled into our bed, I went back into her room and decided to confront whatever this entity was that was in my home and in my daughter's room. Now, I had the light on and went to the center of the room, and I told the spirit that it was not welcome in my house. I didn't want it here and it didn't belong here. I ordered it to leave in a firm voice, as if I knew there was someone there. I was not scared, just upset about this whole situation. As I was speaking, the lights in her room started to flicker on and off. I didn't stop. I kept repeating myself over and over until it stopped. I'm not sure how long it lasted, but when it did stop, I prayed. There has not been any more activity since, but I'm still here listening and waiting with hopes that whatever was there is gone. If anyone has some suggestions on what should be done, let me know. In the meantime, I hope that it doesn't come back, and let's hope that this isn't the calm before the storm. One night when I was around 16 or 17 years old, about 12 years ago, I suddenly woke from my sleep and immediately sensed that something was off. I saw the clock and it was around 3:30 a.m. Not thinking much of it, I was just gonna roll over and try to go back to sleep. That was until I realized that I couldn't move. I was laying on my back and just felt a huge surge of panic rush through my body. This had never happened to me before, and I had no idea what sleep paralysis even was at the time. I was trying to kick my legs, wave my arms, scream out for my parents, but no luck. Sleep paralysis aside, there was an eerie feeling in the air that was making me feel extremely vulnerable and more scared than I already was. In the midst of my internal panic, I felt my left arm slowly start to move, but I was not the one moving it. It started to move towards my face, and I was trying to use all of my non-existent power to try to stop it. As it slowly started going towards my neck, I remember trying to scream for my parents, but it was just me screaming in my head. Then my own hand started choking me, and I had no way of stopping it. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, just kept thinking, I'm about to die right now. Growing up, I was raised in a Christian household, so my first thought at the moment was it could possibly be a demon. I remember repeatedly praying over and over again in my head for the Lord to protect me from this evil. After about 30 seconds, I'm assuming it was, but it felt like forever, my hand let go, and I could breathe, move, and speak. I was too terrified to move, let alone leave my bed to go to my parents' room. Until I was able to fall back asleep, I wrapped my arms under the blankets so tight so they weren't exposed. That was one of the scariest things to ever happen to me, and to this day I don't sleep with my arms outside the blankets, no matter how hot I am in the bed. What do you guys think it could have been? I haven't had anything like that happen to me since, and I hope that remains the case. When I was 19, I worked split shifts with the school district. My morning shift was 6 to 9, so I would nap before my 11 to 1, then again before my 3 to 5, as I would stay up too late to get real sleep. My grandma lived up the road from the building, so I would go to nap there, in my old bedroom. You'd walk into the room, and in the center was a bed, and to the left was the dresser, with a huge mirror. I fell asleep one day and woke up to my alarm. But this time, I woke up facing the mirror, and my brother was sitting there on my bed, glaring at my alarm like it was the worst thing he'd ever heard. I started to tell him that he could have woken me up to hang out, but I didn't even make it through the sentence before I turned to actually face him, and no one was there. I have never fled out of a room or a house so fast in all my life. This didn't happen to me, but to my mom. I only stay at my parents' house over the weekend since I'm in college, so I wasn't home when these encounters happened. Basically, my mom said that she's felt someone or something sitting on the corner of her bed between the hours of 2:30 and 3:30 in the morning. I know from watching and reading many paranormal documentaries that the most activity happens around 3 a.m., so right off the bat I kind of figured she was experiencing something paranormal. It happened Thursday or Friday of last week and last night. The first time it happened, she was freaked out, but sort of just brushed it off. We have 2 big dogs, but they never get on the bed at night. But she thought maybe one of them had tried getting up there for some reason. The second time she experienced this, she quickly turned her phone flashlight on to see if it was one of the dogs, but they were both sound asleep on the floor. As she was falling back asleep, she felt something tug the corner of her blanket, the opposite side of where my dad sleeps, so it wasn't him. My mom is definitely not one to make things up, and although my dad has not seen or felt anything, it's very plausible that there is a presence. My sister, who still lives at home, said that she sometimes feels presences in her room or in the basement, but hasn't experienced what my mom has. I've also never experienced anything in that house, and my room is right across the hall from my parents' room. I just thought it was worth sharing, since it's happened to her twice now. I don't know if she will experience anything else. For years, I've had something in my house. Mischievous stuff like tossing combs across the room. Many, many times. Toothpaste gets tossed and squirted so the lid was removed and then smashed. Beds shake, the TV goes off as we're watching it, and in a separate unit, the DVD player turns on and starts up, trying to play a DVD. Lights go on in dark rooms, especially after we've had a family squabble. Things disappear. Looked for by 3 people in a place that we all look, there it is later. We have shadow animals, like shadow people but small, knee-high. There are big bangs with nothing visible ever found, even after days of checking. We'll hear loud, sing-song type humming, and the cats will stare and freak out at things that humans can't see. You get the idea. Lots of these things happen when guests are over and they can see that we are not doing anything to cause what's going on. My daughter was over a few weeks ago, and apparently she took it home with her. Tossing things off her counters was the main thing that was happening. Nothing happened at my home during that time. Nothing. It was so peaceful. Then our daughter visits and apparently brought it back to our house. The same type of things start going on, with the addition of when I had to go out to the garage and something zoomed past my legs to get out first. It was like a dog rushing past its owner to happily get outside to play, but there was no dog. My daughter visited again, and it followed her back to her place. The last few nights, she's had weird dreams and has been woken up by pantry items being tossed across the kitchen. My granddaughter was watching a YouTube video on their TV, and the video stopped midway. Another video came on that was not the right kind, just one of those you might be interested in video options. Just a totally random video. That's what we have so far. We don't know what this thing is, but whatever it is, it's traveling between 2 homes.